Hey guys, it's me Jacob again, and this is another update about my uh, experiment of studying JavaScript for many hours, for many days. It's kind of undefined how long I'm going to do it for. I think somewhat loosely I'm thinking about doing it for about like 30 days, like a month or so. Um, but it could shift. Um, so I got through a lot of the same information that I've been targeting. My strategy is basically the same as it's always been. Well, I guess it hasn't always been that way, but I think that there are different approaches to trying to get good at programming, and they're good for different things. Some people basically try and do more of like a depth first approach, where they try and they want to apply what they're learning immediately. They want to, I think that there's different schools of thought for sure. One of them is definitely like doing projects, getting out there as soon as possible, and I definitely agree that you should basically deploy the programs you write, like probably as quick. I mean, what kind of program are you making if you're not deploying it, right? To the cloud or something. So I believe that that is a really really big step. But there are these other things too, where it's like you don't get better at writing code by just writing code all the time. And that sounds stupid, but like actually, if you just write code every day for like 5 hours a day, all you're going to do is get really good at repeating what you already know how to do. Writing code is more like an exercise in demonstrating your knowledge, leveraging your skills, applying what you know. And you can learn from it, but there's like diminishing returns. And so I've always found myself sort of having to come back to what I like to call pure learning. It's like being a good programmer is more about reading than it is about writing. Um, Reading is much harder to do. Like if you actually read source code for like 4 hours, that's much more tiring than writing source code, writing code um, for like 4 hours. And this makes complete sense because when you're writing code, a lot of the time there's just complete dead time. Your brain is just sort of like sitting there, but like right, you're not like literally writing and computing and like making decisions the whole time. You might think about it and have to kind of talk through it a bunch, but it's even then it's like it's more like burstable and less sustained. But reading you can basically sustain that forever. You could have a stream of information that you're just consuming, and that seems much more like it's hard to comprehend that, and it's tiring to do that. But ultimately, I think that that is where you go from. I think that's where the greatest potential is. Right? It's sort of funny that like some people think that they're going to be a great programmer, but they haven't read that many different programs, and they haven't read that many different authors, and they haven't read that many different like permutations or pages, but they still have a very opinionated point of view on programming, right? I've had friends before that basically um, they have such a strong opinion about coding standards and like patterns. But it's kind of funny because mostly what they're doing is regurgitating an article that they read. They're not actually talking from the experience of reading tons of different libraries and pieces of code, because they would probably have a different opinion about what's actually important and significant in programming. Like, what's the most important thing? What really gives humans more efficiency. Signal to noise type of stuff. You can talk about all sorts of nonsense, but what actually increases the mathematical power of what people are doing? And that's like kind of an abstract tangent that I got on to, but I think about that kind of stuff a lot. And that's kind of why I've fallen into this position where it's like documentation is decent to read infrequently. Source code is decent to read at the highest frequency. If you spent and you don't really want to repeat stuff too much. Like you could, theoretically comparing these two different learning styles, you could say there's like a library that you're interested in and it has like 3 files. I should just use actual like information sizes. Say you're interested in like 200 kilobytes of information, right? That could be like 20 files. It could be like 3 big files. It could be like 40 small files. But say you're reading a library that's basically got that much information. Let me see here. Okay, so one of the libraries that I've been reading is React Helmet. Okay, it has 7 files that I'm reading and has 300 kilobytes of information. One way to read it is to go really slowly through each file until you're convinced that you understand it as well as possible. Another way to read it is to read it at a very steady, fixed rate. Absorb what you can from it and basically abandon what you didn't comprehend. You just move on, right? Advantages and disadvantages. One huge advantage is if you actually don't read source code at a fixed rate, the amount and the abundance of source code is so large that you will never be able to read some things that other people will if they read at more of a fixed rate, right? If you take too long and you're too depth first, in the grand scheme of things, you will literally never be able to see certain things. It may not matter if the pool of permutations that you see is large enough that even though you're not looking at this thing that someone else did see, you saw something else that's almost the same. It's similar enough, right? It's not the color blood red, but it's like crimson. It's the same pattern, right? But ultimately, in my experience, there are so many different ways to do stuff, and I prefer to just... that's kind of like a good way of explaining it. Reading source code at sort of a fixed speed and sacrificing comprehension. But the things that I end up comprehending are patterns that exist in mini files, right? They're more ubiquitous patterns. They're not so specific. They're not depth first. They're breadth first. And so it's interesting. And that sort of shapes your code style for sure. But I don't even know, I'm not even sure. But anyways, this whole, so many tangents. This is basically just a series about me talking about learning while I document the fact that I'm studying JavaScript specifically. And really, JavaScript seems like, JavaScript has a lot of tools written in JavaScript for JavaScript. And though it seems like a lot of learning about JavaScript is learning about those tools as well. And I kind of have to throw in CSS a little bit. HTML I feel is very simple. I understand HTML. It's pretty simple. CSS is not complicated in terms of the actual language, but it's just a lot of random keys, and they interact in these really strange ways. And I've never gotten a very good comprehension of it. I might not get to that, but I'm definitely going to get a good comprehension of JavaScript. and how React, TypeScript, Babel, Webpack, you know, how they all kind of like work together. And are really the same thing in a lot of ways. They're all built with JavaScript, and a lot of what they do. What's interesting is there's so much JavaScript code that is doing the same stuff that Python does. When I say that, what I really mean is like local file I/O, running scripts, like running stuff in a shell. A lot of the time, that's like an exec command or something like that. But just like opening a file, writing the file, manipulating strings. And the JavaScript language is slightly different in how it like allows you to do stuff. But this is it kind of comes back to the main point I was trying to say before. It's different, but in a mathematical sense, does it matter? Does the way it's structured actually matter? Is it a limitation? I don't think so. I don't really think so. I think like JavaScript and Python are basically capable of doing all of the same things. The only big difference is that JavaScript has all of the support for running inside of this very specific program called a browser. That's literally it, right? It's still very interesting though. And so this is day 3. I actually recorded this video the first time, and it's weird because the way I record these videos, I have zero plan, and I just sit down and basically dump some of my thoughts. And so the first time I recorded this, it was different, and I don't really try to repeat it, and I'm kind of just like leaning into the fact that I sit down, I authentically dump my information, what I feel, what I think. I do a minimal amount of editing. I move on. I'm not doing any clickbaiting. I'm really failing in terms of the YouTube game. And it may be like that forever. I don't really know. But I'm not really thinking about that all that much. I might start making some videos that are a little bit more clickbaity, just to try and get some people in. I want to be more sticky though. I want to be sticky. I'm not about superfluous junk like top 10 programming languages, top 7 habits of a programmer. I don't even know that I don't think that way really. I mean, I don't know. I would have to think about that. I could probably write a list though about what's important, what I think is the most important thing to becoming a great programmer, right? This is also very different than if you're just trying to be like a professional employed programmer and you don't want to spend tons of extra time. You just want to live your life, right? That is just a different end goal, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is totally cool with me. But there is a more extreme approach, which is like you don't want to just produce something. You want to understand how it works. Right? I'm not teaching you how to build a business. Although a lot of my ideas have some entrepreneurial like angle to them. That's not what I'm trying to do. Maybe eventually my videos will have more of that, but like I'm not marketing anything really. I mean, I guess I advertise my blog. There's that idea where I'm like, I guess trying to get some of my different things that I put a lot of time into, where people can see them. But yeah, anyways, that's me rambling again. It's going good. If you see me looking this direction, it's because I can see myself on the screen. And so I try and look here, but it's like a kind of a bad habit, and maybe I'll get away from that. But the most important thing is what I'm saying, not the way I'm saying it. I mean, that is important too, but it's more important like the content of my idea than like the way that I present the idea, right? I feel like as a society, we should kind of let go of the some people are really awkward. They're really bad at communicating. They're really unattractive when they communicate. They're not charismatic. But they have really good things to say. They have really good ideas. And I think that as a society, we just can't really figure that out sometimes. And so charisma is just equivalent to intelligence, even though it shouldn't be. Like the way you present an idea, I mean, in some ways it matters, but like, yeah. Man, I'm just rambling so much. Oh, 15 minutes? Okay, yeah. Thanks, anyways, for stopping by, listening to my video. Go check out my blog. Let me know if you have any great resources to learn JavaScript from. Let me know what you think about learning how to code. Let me know what you want to hear. Yeah, that's it. All right, thanks. Peace.